From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex Podcast episode of the day. Liz Giorgi on the Riderflex Podcast. Good morning, Liz.
It's me. I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Are you in Denver, Boulder? Where are you today?
We're Denver people. Yeah, it's Denver people today.
All right. Very cool. Well, you got a great story. I was studying you last night, looking up stuff this morning. You got lots of stuff out there, lots of interviews on YouTube and things, which is super awesome. And I know you're kind of a serial entrepreneur now. I guess you could classify yourself as
I get to be now. Yeah, I've done it twice. Right, so I guess I'd say I'm serial now.
Is that the definition? I don't know. We'll get into soona, but before we do, how about just you as a person a little bit? I just want to know, let's just go all the way back to maybe some childhood stuff, where you grew up, some mom and dad, siblings. Well, walk us through some of that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I was really, I had a really unusual childhood. I was born in northern Minnesota in a place called the Iron Range, and it is a small series of towns that are all centered around iron ore mining on the Canadian border. And so grew up there. I was really fortunate to grow up in a family business. My grandfather had a canoe outfitter and had that canoe outfitter for 25 years. And as a child, I distinctly remember having many experiences, both being in the Boundary Waters canoe area where we largely took folks on expeditions, but also, just being in the shop and being with my family in an environment where everyone was contributing to the success of the business. And so my mom would do things like pack lunches. My grandmother would be, answering the phones, and it was always really a big part of our lives. And then in the winter, we had a tree farm. So we had acreages of trees where, we cut down Christmas trees. So I had it sounds very idyllic and it was idyllic. I was very fortunate in that way. My parents actually were both public school teachers, which was a really huge gift for both my brother and I. I have one younger brother named Adam. And we both became really passionate about, I think going out and seeing what there is in the world for us to do outside of where we grew up in a very rural area. So I went to school thinking I wanted to be Barbara Walters. I had kind of this vision of delivering your nightly news to you or answering the hard questions of politicians and business leaders and prime ministers. And I very quickly realized when I got to journalism school that most news anchors deliver really bad news all the time. And I was a really positive person and I wanted to do things that were more positive in the world. And so ultimately ended up taking a technical path in production. And so did a lot more of television editing, commercial editing, script writing, things of that nature. And I loved it, went to a state university, which is kind of in the startup world, an anomaly. Everyone I meet, I feel like went to business school, and I went to school for television. But it was wonderful. I had a great freelance career for almost a decade before I started my first business. And it was the kind of experience that one, makes you really honed in on storytelling and how do you tell great stories? How do you help people understand the what and the why? But the other thing is I felt like it just made me super comfortable in a business environment. When you are moving from job to job and set to set, and you're really trying out a lot of different crews and a lot of different relationships, you get used to working with lots of different types of people. So it was a huge gift and something that I've really enjoyed being able to share with folks now, because I think a lot of the entrepreneurial stories we hear are people who are like, I went to business school. I knew I wanted to have a startup. This is what I did. And I didn't know that coming out of school. I had a completely different vision for my life, and very quickly, very quickly realized that this doesn't have to be the only path. You can do a lot of other things to get to entrepreneurship. And I'm really lucky that I've been able to do so.
What made you decide to start Mightier? I mean, I think you were a tech reporter maybe at the time in New York City, maybe. Were you based in New York then?
Yeah, for a little while I was working with apartment therapy, and it was a kind of a combination of things. I was freelancing and doing a lot of different things, and realized that it's actually like a coming home sort of story. It's very Sweet Home Alabama. My grandfather, who had the canoe outfitter, passed in
I see.
October of 2012. And he
Okay.
was 93 years old. And so I had to make the long journey home to northern Minnesota, and got there. And the entire time home, I was going home, I was just thinking, like, who's going to be at my grandfather's funeral? Like, all of his family have passed, all of his good friends have passed. Like,
Mm,
we have a
mm,
pretty small family. Like, who is even going to be at this funeral?
right.
And it was amazing because when I got there, there was literally hundreds of people who had gone on canoe expeditions with him, had worked for his canoe outfitter over the 25 years that he was in business.
Wow.
And I felt just called to go back to that
Mm,
environment, having a community built around a business. And so I
mm,
got back home and decided I'm going to start a company. I didn't know what I was going to start. I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know anything. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But yeah, my grandfather's passing, and that sort of
mm.
remarkable moment of realizing
Interesting.
the community that can form around a business was pretty
Wow.
seminal for me.
Wow, he was a major influence on your life then, especially with the entrepreneurial bug, right? You had
Mm-hmm.
it in there. Okay, then how did you come to Mightier? Like how did you decide on that? Walk us into that whole transition.
Oh my Lord. Okay. Well, I had been doing a lot of work turning television shows into YouTube channels. So one of
Okay.
the freelance jobs I was getting was I was helping companies that were sort of looking at all this material that was being shot for their traditional programming and saying, how do we turn this into other content online?
Mm,
And at the
mm,
time, YouTube was becoming a place where it was really accepted for this behind the scenes content, this cutting room floor content
mm,
to
mm.
come online. And so I was doing that with a lot of different folks, and I realized, oh, there's going to be a path here where there's going to be commercial work on YouTube. So I knew there would be commercials and ads on YouTube at some point. I just didn't know when. And so I decided that what I was going to do is I was going to be the first production company to focus on producing ads for the internet, specifically for platforms like YouTube.
I
And
see.
I was just putting pieces together, and I think sometimes that's where the best businesses come from. You see an opportunity, you see a problem, you see that no one else is doing it, and you just sort of piece those little segments of the pie together and create something that people need. And I got really, really lucky, honestly, because the very first project that I did was for a nonprofit called the Institute on the Environment. And that campaign that we worked on went viral in its own right. So
Ah,
it was a piece that you can still go watch to this day, and it had millions of views. It was seen. It was talked about in the New York Times. It was covered in Wired. It was all over the place. And so I will always be grateful because the first project I did was probably the most successful project I did in in 8 years of running that business. But you know what? Sometimes that's just what happens.
you're right.
You just have those moments.
And did you bootstrap it? Did you have to raise cash early on for that one?
I
How did
bootstrapped it.
you
Hmm.
bootstrapped it? Okay, okay. And you just got client. How many employees by the time you sold that?
We were at 15 when I sold. Yeah.
15. Was your
Hmm.
plan to exit, or it just kind of happened? I mean, were you just kind of moving along and an opportunity came, or was there a specific whiteboarded plan? Like, I'm going to sell when I get
No,
to
there
here.
was no grand plan. No, there was no grand plan. I mean, on the baseline level, what happened was in 2018, Haley Anderson was my director of animation at Mightier.
Yeah.
And she and I went on vacation together to Palm Springs, and
Okay.
we were hiking in Joshua Tree. And over the course of the week, we just kept talking about how video was becoming more and more important. Photography was becoming more and more important. The ways in which we were sharing content online were growing and changing and moving even faster. But the
Mhm.
ways that we were producing the content was not changing. We were still producing content in this very slow, highly fragmented, extremely manual process. And she
Mm.
and I just kind of both became fascinated with this question of how do we create a production process that is as fast and dynamic as the ways we're sharing content online now. That was it. That was literally that week on vacation. That was what we landed on as a core thesis. And then a full year passed. We kept talking about it. We were working on
Okay.
Mightier, but what ultimately happened was in 2019, she and I had the first working prototype of what we believed Soona could be, which is a completely transparent virtualized platform for creating content, where every single time someone takes a photo on a photo camera or shoots a video clip in one of our studios, it instantly becomes reviewable and a shoppable asset for our customer. And so that simple prototype that we had built, I submitted that to Techstars Boulder. They were incredibly generous to offer us a spot in the program with this MVP that barely worked. And I think Haley and I just became obsessed with it. We just said, there's something here. We don't, we know that we need to spend more time on it. And the only way we can spend more time on it is if we don't have to keep running this other business together. And so she and I decided to start talking to brokers and start talking to our existing customers and seeing if anybody had any interest in working with us. And ultimately sold the company to Standard, in part because they were an incredible customer of ours. And so we knew we had a great working relationship. We knew that there was opportunity there for them to grow their business with the help of our team. And it was a really fortuitous outcome, but it was not a master plan. It was a one step at a time, realizing what opportunities existed for us and how we could, add the most value for everyone around the table.
Did you use the money that you got from selling Mightier to get Soona going, along with the Techstars, I guess,
seed investment? Some extent. Yeah, there was quite a bit of seed money from Mightier that went into the formation of Soona.
I see.
But then, ultimately coming out of Techstars, we ended up raising a pre-seed before we launched. We raised about $1 million from 2048 Ventures in New York, just based on the technology itself. And then that gave us the runway to get us launched. Then we raised a seed in the winter of 2019. It was all very fast. And then this year we're going to be announcing soon the raise of our Series A. And so, these things go so much faster than you ever really imagine when you actually have a great idea that needs to exist in the world.
Did you ever have to raise cash when you were at Mightier, or the cash raise experience is all at Soona so far?
At Soona, Mightier was really, I had a great relationship with a banker, and because it was a profitable business from the get, we were always able to, and listen, there's different kinds of businesses that need different kinds of financing, right? So with a company like Mightier, where we're work for hire, you hire us to make your ad, or you hire us to make your campaign. The economics of that are very different from a company like Soona, where we're trying to invent a technology platform that can solve a problem for our customers. And we have a huge vision for creating that platform, where you have to make tremendous technology investments along the way. So with Mightier, I built an incredible relationship with our banker. We, were able to work with them when we needed to make investments in the business and, pay those debts off over time. And with Soona, it's more of a, hey, we think there's a massive $1 billion opportunity here to solve a problem. So we're going to go seek out that venture capital to help us go as quickly as possible and not have that debt hanging over our heads.
How much cash have you raised so far total for Soona?
Between our pre-seed and our seed, we raised $5 million. Our Series A will be in the range of $10 million.
Congratulations. That's not easy to do. How big is the company right now, employee-wise?
Yeah, so Soona has sort of two teams. We have the core HQ team that really builds the technology and the product. And then we have our photography teams that are distributed all over the country. And so the core team's about 30 folks. And then we're working with about 30 photographers across the US.
Are the photographers contractors or employees, or how do you do that? What's that business model? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so our creative crews are actually a blended hybrid, depending on, how long they've been on the platform, and also, how successful they are on the platform. So we have about 16 creatives right now that are full-time on the platform. They are really successful with the customers. They're successful with the team. They work really well with the product. And then we have other creatives that just want to, pick up a couple shifts a week, pick up a couple shoots a week. And so that's sort of how we're working with them right now. And we'll continue to scale in that blended model. I think it's really important. One of the conversations that we see happening in the startup community is sort of this permanent freelanceritis or permanent contractor work that we see with companies like Uber and Grubhub. And the truth of the matter is, if you're going to hire people, I really believe that if you're going to hire people to do a job, you should be willing to do it for that price yourself. And so being really conscientious about that, we really wanted to have a path towards a career at Soona, not just having a path for, permanent permanent contracting on the platform. So that's the plan right now.
Give us the Soona elevator pitch real quick as it stands today for the people that don't really know what we're talking about, or they haven't looked it up yet. They're listening to you right now. And like, Soona, what is that? Give us the elevator pitch. Go for it.
Yeah, so Soona is a virtual photo shoot platform that makes it possible for you to plan a photo shoot, have your photo shoot completely online via a browser where you're able to see every single photo and video clip as it's created. You pay for your photos and videos completely a la carte. So you pay $39 per photo, $93 per video clip, and we deliver them in 24 hours after you check out. We're building what we believe is the fastest and the most affordable way to create content for your e-commerce store, your marketing materials, or anything else you're trying to communicate online.
Awesome. Very good. Nice. What do you enjoy most right now? Do you like the operations? Do you like the people? Do you like the tech? Do you like the cash raise? Do you like dealing with the VC? What's your as a CEO, you're pulled between all of those. What's your favorite?
Yeah, right now I'm working really heavily on product and growth strategy. So trying to figure out what are the next few things that we're going to do in Q3 and Q4 of this year to really accelerate the path that we're on. And so I'm spending a lot of time looking at customer behavior. I'm spending a lot of time interviewing customers. I'm spending an insane amount of time reviewing how they're using the product and trying to understand to the best of our ability what they love and don't love about the product. And so I love that process because when that those customer insights get aligned with your vision for growing the business, you can actually come up with a business strategy that has accelerant on it. And so that's really what I love doing and what I'm spending a lot of my time doing right now.
So you've been a CEO now. This is your second startup. You've been a CEO for, I don't know, 6-7 years, I guess, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it'll be 9 years this October.
9 years. What advice would you give to a brand new CEO of a startup with 8 or 10 employees? What are 2 or 3 things? I know that's probably an hour podcast, just that one question.
Yeah.
But what are 2 or 3 things you would say to a brand new CEO?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is if you don't know your numbers, then you don't know your business. I think a lot of CEOs think like, oh, I'll have an accountant work on our numbers or work on our books, and I'll have them prepare P&Ls and things like that. And that's just not an option, in my opinion. I spent the first 3 years of running Mightier not knowing, I didn't even know what a P&L was. I'm embarrassed to say, and realized very quickly that in order for the business to grow, I needed to know what the business was doing and how we made money and how we most effectively made money. And so I actually took myself back to business school for a year in order to educate myself and make sure that I understood the financials of the business. And when you understand the financials, you actually understand the health of your business. It's like being able to take the pulse of your business at any point in time, right? Are you alive? Or are you dead? Kind of thing. The second thing I would say is it really does come down to, if you are the CEO of a business, you are the chief everything officer at that stage, right? Like we think that there's like this boss mentality, but the truth of the matter is it comes down to you. What business decisions you're going to make, how the customer feels about your company, what your marketing message is, how you are portraying your business to the world. You are responsible for each one of those things. And if you don't figure out a way to really exact that leadership with good intention, it can go wrong really quickly. And so delegating is good. You should absolutely delegate, but you got to figure out a way to do it that keeps you on the beat of what's actually going on in your business. And then the final thing I would say is if you don't work on yourself, you'll build a really bad culture. And so being really, really keen on, I say this a lot and some people think I'm nuts, but spend time in therapy, spend time on your self-help, spend time taking care of yourself. Because those things, if you model, conscientiousness, if you model patience, if you model having grace when people make a mistake, those things will become your culture, right? And so there are things that you can do, and it's as simple as making sure that you go get a therapist and deal with some of your anger issues if you've got anger issues, or deal with your insecurity around money if you have insecurity around money, or deal with your distrust of people because of what happened with your parents. If you have distrust in your life, you will have distrust in your business. And so you cannot be the leader that your business needs you to be if you're not willing to invest in yourself and in your mental wealth.
Really good advice, Liz, and personal. Thank you for sharing all of that right there. I really appreciate that. Let me ask you this. You talked a little bit about people and culture. When you're hiring right now for your team, and you're going to be scaling up even more, obviously, because you're raising more cash, which means you're going to hire more people.
Hmm.
Uh, what i- what are your favorite interview techniques or questions? Is there anything you do in particular when you're talking to somebody that helps you decide whether or not they're right for the team?
Yeah, there's a couple different. So one of the things that we always do is called a crew interview. And so it's a little bit of, what questions I ask, but also how we think about a hiring decision. So especially if someone's going to come into a leadership role, we actually have people who are going to report to this individual also be part of that interview process. And
Mm, mm,
that is critical to me because keep in mind, you're hiring that person for their expertise and their depth of knowledge, but you're also hiring them to lead other humans. And so you want to know, how do those humans feel about being led by that person? Are they excited? Are they scared? Do they have emerging questions that might come out of a conversation? And so I think having a crew interview or in your organization, it might be a direct report interview. That kind of dialogue is really helpful. I think some of the questions I love to ask are around, what are some of the things that you've done in your career that are really creative, and what are some of the things you've done in your career that are really practical or data oriented, and so that you can see both the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain in people.
mm, mhm.
One of my favorite things to do is to ask someone who's coming into an engineering role, tell me about something you've done recently that's creative. And they light up because they haven't been asked a question like that before. They haven't been invited to embrace that side of themselves. And so,
Right.
on the other side of it, asking someone who is maybe applying for a graphic design job, tell me about something you've done recently that was really diligently data oriented, and what were some of the
Right.
decisions that you made. And again, they light up because they go, wow, you're thinking about me as a strategic thinker. You're thinking about me in a different way. And
Yes.
so you get a
Interesting.
sense of the other side of the person, which I think is
Mm.
so key.
That's really good, Liz. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, you're hiring up right now, which is great. Congratulations on the team you're building over there. Let's move into some entrepreneurial advice. Now that you've done this twice and you went through Techstars and now you're dealing with
Hmm.
cash raise, you're dealing with investors. I mean, you're just learning all kinds of stuff now, experiencing all kinds of things. If there's somebody listening to this episode, they want to start their own business, but they haven't quite made the jump. They're kind of where you were at there when you were
Yeah.
working for apartment therapy, right? They're thinking about it. Um, what would you tell them? What would you tell them to encourage them to make the leap?
It's funny because there's been a lot of conversations recently among some of my friends about the growing world of entrepreneurship. It's like I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know what I'm doing, and so I have entrepreneurship. Um, and I think that's super normal, and it's okay to be scared. I think a lot of folks think you're supposed to walk into it going like, I'm so excited, and here's all the ego I have about it, and here's all the passion I have about it. And if you're not acknowledging that you feel scared, you're probably gonna never do it, because you've got to
Mm,
know that you're taking a risk fully. You've got to be conscious of the risk that you're taking. And so one of the first things I would tell you is be real with yourself about how it feels to take a chance like this. The second thing I would say is only do something that you truly can contribute to the world in a different way. I think a lot of folks go online, go on these Reddit forums, and they're like, I'm just going to start a drop shipping business because why not? Or I'm going to start, doing this other business I know nothing about because why not? The truth is that I tweeted the other day, I've been told no by more than 300 people in my many, many conversations about Soona. And it doesn't even phase me, in part because Soona is really the thing I'm supposed to be doing with my life.
mm,
I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Had I been told no 300 times about, a fashion line, which I have no business starting, I probably would have quit. And so you need to do something that you have such a distinctive purpose and need to do that you can tolerate the downs that are going to be inevitable as part of this process. And so that's really what I would say is,
mm.
hone in on what am I going to be doing in the world that has real purpose for me?
What's what's a real scary time you want to share? Has there been a couple of moments, through either business, by the way? Has there been a couple of really scary times where, you woke up in the middle of the night in the at 3 a.m. and it's cold sweat or whatever you want to share? Car got repossessed because you ran out of money. I don't know. Anything.
Yeah, that's a real scary. I mean, I had a real scary time just when I started Suna, because it's interesting, but I went from having, 15 people and a finance person and help with HR and lawyers and people who, I had relationships with, and I had built, over time, to it's just me and Haley again working in my spare bedroom. And not to sound trite about it, but I got really comfortable having help. I got super
Mm,
comfortable having
mm.
help, and it was scary not to have as much help again and to kind of go back to the drawing board. And I don't think you can underestimate that. So much of why you don't want to start a business usually is because you're comfortable, and so you've got to decide how uncomfortable are you willing to be.
Right.
Another
Because,
really,
yep.
yeah, no, it's so designed to make you uncomfortable. Another time though that I can remember that was really scary is um my husband and I actually separated at one point during this entire entrepreneurial journey, because we were both workaholics and we just could not figure out how to maintain a marriage and keep our business. He actually is an engineer, but he has had a long career working in firms, and I'm an entrepreneur, and we both just had like laser vision on our careers and couldn't figure out how to navigate our marriage, and managed to get to the other side of it. And we're super happy, and I love my husband, and I feel so grateful that he's on my team. But there have been moments where I put everything about the business first. The
Mhm.
business was number one, number two, and number three. And I had to do some work on myself, going back to this idea of like investing in your mental wealth, to realize like, what's the point of doing this as one, two, and three if there's not going to be anybody else on the other side of it?
Right.
Um, and if I'm going to be alone at the other side of it. And so I had to figure out how to navigate that. And it was hard, and it was scary, but it was also, I think our marriage is now better because we went through that together.
Really good point, and I appreciate you sharing that very personal story. Being an entrepreneur is really hard. Being a CEO is really hard, and trying to do both of those things while you're alone is super scary. So you want to keep your relationships intact, right? So you have a partner to share with, and that can support you during those times. How about this? Moving towards wrap up, I want to ask a couple more questions. Something about Liz that most people don't know. Anything interesting? A weird hobby? I don't know, something that most people don't know about you that's a part of your life.
Hmm. Um, Probably something people don't know about me is I grew up, it's actually a shared thing my husband and I both have. My dad was a painter. Every night, every weekend, he was painting landscapes, portraiture, whatever. And my husband's dad is also a professional painter and illustrator. And
Interesting.
so we spend a lot of time on the weekends painting,
Oh,
whether it's like watercolors or acrylics or I have my husband just finished a little painting the other day that is sitting on my desk here. I spend a lot of time with paint.
that's pretty
So
cool.
it's
Okay.
a really nice visceral thing that you can do to kind of get out of your head and get into your hands and see what creativity comes out.
Put your phone down, close your laptop, work on the
That's
paint,
right.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
very good. If you could call your young self coming out of college and tell the young Liz, the 21-year-old Liz, anything knowing what you know now, what would you say to her?
Mm. Oh, I think I would probably just tell her, you're going to be so lucky. Life is really going to be great. I think I had a lot of fear that my dreams weren't going to come true. And every dream I had was not the dream I expected. My dreams have changed. And I probably would more than anything say, like, your dreams are going to change, and that's okay. And that's, been so wonderful. I didn't imagine being an entrepreneur when I was 22. And Now I'm sitting here looking at the other side of 30 and getting closer to 40 and going, yeah, that worked out. I'm really glad my dreams changed. And so it's been a good thing that my dreams changed. And I'm really grateful that they have.
Mm. Last question. If you could put your core purpose in life into a sentence at this stage, at this age, at this stage,
Mm-hmm.
what does that sound like? The core purpose for Liz?
Boy, this is a deep one. I think I want to be an example of what women living out loud can look like.
What does living out loud mean to you?
I've spent so much of my life, playing by the rules or making people comfortable with what I had to say. And now I just don't really care if you're comfortable with it or not. I am clear on the fact that I am the right person to be building this company. I am clear that you can build a company with equality and justice built into your DNA. I am clear that sharing what's hard is just as important as sharing what's good. Those are things that are really sort of frowned upon, I think, and sometimes, and especially in the entrepreneurial communities. I call it startup theater. We're all obsessed with the most grandiose moments, but the moments that matter, the moments that we learn from, the moments that make us who we are the moments when you've been kicked to your knees and you're questioning everything you've ever thought about, and you manage to find something inside of yourself that is true and real, and it is the distinctive reason why you are the right person to be doing what you are doing. Those are the moments to share. Those are the things, I shared on LinkedIn about how my husband and I had separated and how what we had to do to get back together and still live our dreams. And, the amount of response to that was astonishing to me. And it was an example of living out loud. Well, I could post about how perfect my marriage is, but who learns from that? No one's going to learn from that. But when I share about, listen, my husband and I had to have a conversation with a potential employer of his about the fact that my career takes priority and he's going to have to be the one that does, vet visits and childcare and things like that. And people are not ready for that conversation, let me tell you. But you know what? I'm ready. So we're going to have it.
If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. The Riderflex Podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviewing. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get information and pricing on the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day.